Welcome back. Evolution. I'm gonna talk about one topic today. It's about to get real. It's about Jacob Blake and the police war against black people. Let's get into it. Here we go. So I have a very special guest in the building. He is an activist, a journalist, a voice for the people. Give it up for Mr. X, aka Mr. Exodus. How you doing, brother?
What's going on, man? How you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good. So let's get into it, man. Like this week, something horrible happened. The Jacob Blake shooting, where he was shot 7 times in the back, and he's paralyzed from the waist down. What are your thoughts on that, man?
Honestly, bro, I mean, at this point, it's tiresome. Every month, it seems like every almost 3 to 4 weeks, there's a situation, a national event that's happening concerning black men, black women being gunned down by police. I mean, thankfully, this brother didn't die, but I mean, 7 times, like, he very well could have, lost his life due to what, the police say that they were looking for. See, they thought he saw a knife or something like that, but it's a knife. I'm not necessarily saying that it's not dangerous, but, at this point, man, just on the police, because how many times does this have to happen? Like this whole year, we've been bringing up issues, bringing up cases when the police have misjudgment, like have used misjudgment in reacting to a situation, and I think we are the end, like we get the end result of it. You know what I'm saying? We're the ones who lose our lives statistically.
Yeah, man, I agree with you on everything you just said. And I'm just saying, when I saw that, I was just sick and tired. I'm just like, really? This is what, coming what, 2 months, 3 months after George Floyd? And then we did all that protesting, and then Breonna Taylor's still not getting justice and this and that. And then on top of that, we dealing with this racism and the administration and stuff like that. And now on top of that, we got another case of police brutality where with Jacob Blake was shot 7 times in the back. Like, thank God he's alive, but he's paralyzed from the waist down. That sucks. I'm just sick and tired of seeing that. Seeing all this, and we do all this protesting and yelling and screaming, and nothing gets done, man.
Right. I mean, the issue is, it was done down in front of the church. So it's like at one point, and I've seen the video. I watched it a few times, and the question that I think what people are failing to realize is that at what point are officers deeming that their life is in danger? Like at what point, and that from when I watched the video, I couldn't determine where there was an imminent threat of danger, right? So the officers are talking to the Jacob Blake, whatever's being said is being said, and he told the police officers privy to them stopping him and stuff like that there was a knife in the car. So it wasn't like by surprise that they may or may not have seen the knife when he retrieved to the driver's side of his vehicle. But he was in front of his kids, you know what I'm saying? So, of course, if you have officers, who are talking to you, you're going to feel a certain type of way, especially if, what's the reasoning for your questions. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't know that some of that information hasn't been disclosed yet. But for him to just be going to his vehicle, you can't say that you don't know for sure that he was going to retrieve his life. Like, you don't know that for sure. Especially when he already told you that the knife was in the vehicle. So, just me use the process of elimination, if Jacob Blake was really in a state of mind of wanting to attack the police, I don't think that he would have let the police know, hey, I have this weapon in my car, and then go retrieve it to attack them. Like, that just doesn't, you know what I'm saying? Like, some things you just have to make it make sense. It doesn't make sense. He was with his kids, doing whatever they were doing for the day. It's the same thing like with the other children. This is, and the thing about it is, yes, this was a few months from George Floyd, but there's too many of these situations going on. The situation, actually two situations. One, I forget what the state was, but when the kids, I think it was like the youngest age was like 6, right? All these little girls laid out on the floor. The police drew their weapons out on them. And they were with their aunt. They went to get their nails done. They were having a day out. They went to get their nails done. The vehicle the police thought that the vehicle was stolen.
Oh, yes, I remember this. I remember this.
Right, it was a stolen motorcycle, yet they pulled over an SUV, right?
Yeah.
So they got these kids out here just laid out on the ground in the summertime, guns drawn. You know what I'm saying? The babies is crying. Like, and then even another situation with some teenage boys. Same thing. They shot at them. Luckily, they didn't, they weren't hit, but they still, the kids ran because they were scared.
Yeah.
So we can't keep telling our kids, oh, stop running. You have, unfortunately, if you do or if you don't, you're wrong, right?
Yeah.
Either way, the situation could go drastically bad. The two young boys, I think maybe 14, 15, coming from a football game, the police, pulled them over. They got scared, so they ran. And that's why the officers thought that was okay to fire at them, right?
Yeah.
And it's like they were running away. Again, where's the danger? And these are kids.
Yeah, these are kids. They're not like a immediate thing. They don't have any weapons and stuff like that. It's like, exactly. I fear for my life, and I'm
every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, there's a situation, a national event that's happening, and that's not even counting all the issues. That's not even counting all the events that are happening that aren't videotaped, right?
Yeah.
That are in smaller rural cities where, people's voices may not be as heard because of the evidence of, racism and stuff like that. These are just incidences that just so happen to be videotaped, that just so happen to go viral.
Yeah, most definitely. I understand that because, like, I've seen, like, all these tapes, all these videos, they're going viral, but what you said, what about the ones that's not going viral? And my thing is, because the Jacob Blake situation, you have all these protests and everything else, and it's great that they're protesting, but my question is, where do we go from here? We keep doing the same playbook. It's like we're one-trick ponies. Like, we keep, something bad happens. We're going to get out there and protest. We're going to do this. And then the conversation switches like, they try to deframe the victim, the person that was shot, deframe his character, say he had all a bunch of priors and that. Same thing they did with George Floyd. Oh, he stole a bill or something like that. And he did all this and he has a criminal past or whatever. Just trying to justify the shooting of an unarmed man. He had no weapons. You had, with George Floyd, you had the dude's knee on his neck for 8 minutes. 8 minutes, not relenting. And it looked like from the video that he was enjoying it. And I was like, this is sick. So my question to you is, where do we go from here?
Well, honestly, okay. So what's the protesting, right? Like, is it effective? Yes and no. So if you look at all the different organizations that have been birthed from the protest, then I will say that the protests are effective. I'll speak for Charlotte specifically because that's the city that I'm residing in. There have been a lot of different nonprofit organizations that have, I guess you would say, joined the movement, if you will. So you have organizations like Feed the Movement who go out and literally they feed the homeless, they're providing resources. They have this thing called jail support for protesters who are being arrested. They're helping with bond, helping them with different resources. Maybe if people are unemployed, and it's not even just the protesters. Anybody who's been left jail support is out there to kind of try to provide resources for them. You have this organization called Wheels for Equality. They try to be kind of like the middleman during the protest and try to, keep the peace. If anybody needs any type of medical aid, they have those people out there as well. And it's kind of offsetted different, they've been bringing light to certain situations, right? So there's a very high population of homelessness in the city of Charlotte, where they're kind of secluded to one part of the city, living in tents, right? So there has been a lot of people going out there trying to help these people, especially during COVID, because let's not forget that we're protesting in the middle of a pandemic, right? So they try to provide resources to the homeless people out there. Because of the pandemic, again, you have situations like schools, right? All the schools are remote this year. So you have different organizations coming together, trying to ensure that lower income families, mainly lower income families, but all families have food for their children because the children will be home. And some kids rely on the school lunches and the school breakfasts. Like, that's the only way they were eating. So if they didn't have those type of needs beforehand, before COVID, what makes people think that they will have those resources available while they're home, for a full day. So they have been, providing people with lunches. There've been a lot of pop up. They're starting to pop up refrigerators where people can go and try to get, just certain necessities that they may need in lower income areas. So a lot of things have been happening since the protest that I don't think we should, take away from. A lot of good has come from the protest. But when you talk about the countless times of police brutality and all the negative stuff, then yes, the question does ask, well, what are we really doing, right? So I have been a part of a good number of the protests, and I say it all the time: daytime protests and nighttime protests are completely different. And even with the framing of that, you'll have a lot of city officials out in the daytime protest saying, "Oh yes, Black lives do matter. We care about uh, the systematic racism that this city or whoever cities may be dealing with." And then at nighttime, the same city officials who are out there marching, on 5 o'clock news, saying how they're planning all these things to make the city better, is the same city officials who are ordering the police officers to, to use pepper spray and tear gas and literally just arrest, snatch and grab. It's a snatch and grab technique. What they do with protesters when they'll find maybe one or two protesters who are straddled from the group, they snatch them, grab them, and they arrest them. So you have to talk about those types of situations as well, because that definitely is a thing. Also, the police interaction is a lot different. You have officers who are, we'll march with you during the daytime, and at nighttime, those same officers are the same ones knocking you up, upside your head, because you're outside at night, peacefully protesting. Like, some of these protests couldn't have been more peaceful, but when you have police officers pushing you and, just having a nasty attitude, then the question becomes, how much of it do we pay?
Yeah.
Right? And I think that that's been my biggest thing through this whole thing, is that when dealing with the interactions of police officers as an African American, and at this point it doesn't matter if you're man or woman, child or elder, right? Because I think everybody's getting it. Everybody, like, it's equal opportunity for African Americans to have some type of missed counteraction with the police. So, as an individual who is having a conversation with a police officer, say you're being pulled over for whatever reason, or whatever, it doesn't even matter. And they're being nasty, like just in demeanor, has a nasty disposition, just talking real crazy out the mouth, just because they can, right?
Yeah, they think they're above the law.
Right, being, may even show some type of aggression, mishandling you and stuff like that. As a person, right, man or woman, child or elder, how much do you take until you say, "Bro, get your hands off me"? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So for people to say that, "Oh, well, they shouldn't act this way with police officers," you don't have a right to tell anybody how to react in a situation. Nobody has that right. You don't get to tell me what I can and can't get upset about.
Yeah, I definitely.
Unless you're in that situation. And even if you are in that situation, the beauty of individuality is that we see things differently. We handle things differently. So me and you could literally experience the same thing and have two separate takeaways from it, right? We could go to the ice cream shop and eat some vanilla ice cream. And I could be like, "Man, this is the best ice cream I ever had." And you could be like, "Man, I've had better. It's actually, there's no flavor. It's plain. I don't like it." And both experiences need to be respected the same. I think the issue when it comes to these protests is that people are taking their individualized experiences and pushing it onto someone else. For me, as an African American male who was saying, I have had interactions with police officers where I have been racially profiled, right? I've been, I've been arrested for, things that I haven't done, or even assumed because of the way that I dress that I'm a part of a particular crowd without having that conversation with me to know whether or not I am. I've had those experiences. So for me to have a conversation of a person who's not of color, and I'm sharing those experiences, and because they've never dealt with that firsthand, you negate everything that I say and say, "Oh well, you should have been out." They try to make these excuses, and it's not qualified. Perfect example: the Jake Blake. After the Jake Blake shooting, they had protests. Of course they would, because people are upset. There's a young man who comes to the protest, Well, actually, there was a few people who came to the protest with rifles, right? Because
Right.
at this point, they're like, "Oh, we're going to protect property and stuff like this." This young man did not reside in the city, right? Was not a resident of that city. Came from the outskirts of whatever town he lived in to come to this protest to claim that he wanted to protect property. Ended up killing two people at the protest. Mind you, if you've ever attended a protest, there is a heavy police presence at most protests, right? Because they want to ensure order and all that blah blah stuff.
Yeah.
This young man killed two people with an assault rifle and injured one.
Yeah.
Walked in front of the police, a convoy of police, might I add, with his hands up in the air and went home.
Wow.
He went home. This just happened maybe a couple days ago.
Yeah, I heard about that. He killed two people and everything and just went home. I'm like, wait a minute. You would think the police would arrest him, do something at a protest.
But it's at the protest. So you can't say that, it'd be one thing if there were no witnesses and stuff like that. Mind you, people at the protest are yelling, he did it, and he walked away. So I have there's nothing that you can tell me to make me understand to say anything about black people being shot, gunned down. Because there's no reason. There's absolutely no reason.
None.
What people are failing to realize, if you did something wrong, then of course you should be recommended for it. Like that's just common knowledge. You learn that as a child. Right is right and wrong is wrong.
Yeah.
The issue that people are not focusing on is that there's a different interaction with a person of color as opposed to the person of non-color. The fact that there are more cases of unarmed black individuals being gunned down by police as opposed to the number of cases of people who aren't of color being reprimanded who are armed is an issue.
Yeah.
So you mean to tell me if I'm a white man who walks around with a Glock, assault rifle, whatever, a machete, I have a higher chance of being arrested and living to see the next day as opposed to a black man who is unarmed and maybe I had a counterfeit bill. Maybe I robbed a corner store. I mean, not even robbed. Maybe I stole some things from a corner store. Maybe I fell asleep in my car because I had one too many drinks and I'm just trying to sleep my buzz away before I go home. Maybe I'm taking the police on a high-speed chase. I still have no weapon. I'm on Instagram Live filming everything because, I'm young and I'm just making a very stupid decision in my life. But my decision nonetheless. In all these real cases, maybe I'm a 12-year-old kid playing with a BB gun. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
All these cases have resulted in death.
Maybe I'm just walking home with a pair of Skittles and a hoodie because it's late at night. I'm just trying to get to my house and some fool's following me.
Exactly. Maybe I just got into a car accident and because I just got into a car accident, I'm kind of frantic and my phone is dead and so I go to the nearest neighborhood knocking on the door asking someone, hey, can you call the police? And as the police responds, I end up dying. Like situations like these, right? Where it's like, I mean, it's appalling. And again, it's tiring. It's very tiring. Like,
yeah, I'm tired of this, man.
You can't win for losing at this point. So, I mean, do we really burn the city? Is that an option? Is that something that we do? Do we honestly start to fight back? Do we strategize and militarize ourselves to be able to be forced to not reckon with? Like, these questions have to be asked because how many times? Like, we're tired of going to the same thing. You have the NBA, forfeiting games to make a stand. You have tennis players, national winners of tennis people who are, forfeiting their matches to bring light to what's happening, but it shouldn't have taken off it because, to be quite frank, this has been going on. This is nothing new. This is not something that's, oh, hey guys, look what I found. This has been years and years and years.
This has been going on 400 years, man. Ever since we got to this country.
400 years.
Ever since we got to, because they terrorized us, fed the babies to the alligators, separated the families, had Jim Crow laws, had promised us 40 acres and a mule, didn't get it. Used the 13th Amendment loophole to put us in prison. use all these laws to oppress us. So this is not, like you said, it's not a new issue. It's been going on for years now. And I'm just saying, like, I'm sick and tired of seeing it. And so I want something different. So I believe, like, the solution is should be, like, reparations should definitely be on the table. But also, hey, maybe we do need to militarize ourselves. Maybe we do need to be militant. Or we could continue to do things not violent and not really see any progressive change. Yeah, or we do see some change, but it's not as effective as I would like it to be. Like, this whole police brutality thing needs to stop. It needs to end. I believe Brother Malcolm put it best. He said, "Stop singing and start
We have
swinging."
to talk about defunding the police because they absolutely go hand in hand. You have to defund the police.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you want to end police brutality, you have to defund the police. Police officers, yes, you're here to protect and serve, but however, there clearly has been, I don't want to say mistraining, but maybe too much military training involved when it comes to training police who are community members. I think that there's some type of misinterpretation somewhere. Like, police officers are community service members, right? So your first priority is to serve the community. That's first. So when you have officers who have been, I use this word very fluidly, but beaten in their head that, shoot to kill and, all these military tactics that they learned in BLET, which is their basic law enforcement training, I very, in a small percentage, I do understand why they react the way they react, because that's how they were taught, right? So
Right.
you have all the, hand-to-hand combat movement that they're learning, all the time at the gun range. So when you come as an officer, you just get out of school, and you may be responding to a domestic dispute or something like that. Automatically, you're on 10 because that's what you were taught.
Right.
And then to add on to systematic racism and how you may view other people, if the prisons are full capacity, and you say 80% of them is of African American descent, or Black and brown people, naturally it's just what it is. It's not it is what it is. Naturally, your spirit, whoever it guides you to believe certain things with certain people. So if I'm responding to a domestic dispute, and if they're African American descent, a lot of people, especially officers, and this is just, it's proven, so it's not even like, it's an educated opinion at this point, but it has been proven that you're going to see them in a certain way. You're already going to assume that they may be doing something, what I'm saying, like they're not supposed to be doing. They're more likely to get arrested than a person who is not of color. So how do you break down all those barriers? How do you break down that train of thought? You have to defund the police. And unfortunately, probably every city here in America cannot afford to do that, which is why we will continue to have those issues. You have a lot of the police departments are, low personnel, right? So they make all these incentives for people to join the police force, right? Because their numbers are already low. So when you have these things where it's like, we'll pay you $45,000 a year. You have great benefits, this, that, and the third. We need you to be on the force. As long as you don't have any type of criminal background, for the most part, you'll be okay. The issue is that what they're not looking at is the psyche valve. Yeah. I don't think that their psychological evaluations are in depth enough to weed out people who really don't need to be on the force. If the issue is that you guys are honestly, truly, 100% scared, you don't need to be here. And I'm sorry to say that, but it's true. You don't need to be on the force.
Yeah.
If a black man scares you, someone, a 6'3" muscular built black man scares you, you don't need to be here.
Right.
You don't. It's just, I don't know. Honestly, bro, there's just so many issues that are within the police department. Don't even talk about, you have the rules of police departments, right? Where, majority of them, 90%, they're literally having to beg black and brown people to become police officers so they can have some type of representation, and they end up being the poster boy. But if you live in a rural department where race, let's say like somewhere like Mississippi, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're screwed. If you become a police officer in that department, they already have that's been passed on from generation to generation of ideas of how they see black people. Let's not forget the civil rights movement was only 60 years ago.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? My grandfather, who was 80, was well into his, young adult life at the beginning of the civil rights movement. You know what I'm saying? So not even, and of course, he can, recount some of the things that he went through, but that's not even talking about the first 20 years of his life where he was looked at as a boy.
Yeah, they called him boy, he's called us boy and everything else, and tried to demean us and basically seeing black as stupid.
That, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it was awful.
So if he's still alive, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So these are people's grandchildren who are the police officers now, and we're like, oh, racism doesn't exist. You're a fool.
Yeah.
If you believe racism doesn't exist, you're a fool.
There's something wrong with you if you believe that.
Because there's absolutely something wrong with you. Yeah, people are like, oh, well, you guys have equal rights and stuff like that. Yeah, we may be afforded some things, but let's be real. The opportunities are not as welcoming or as acceptable as it is to a person who's not a felon.
Yeah, and so you have to remember that we have to fight to be human beings. We have to fight to be human beings. They treat us as property. It was on the books. You go back in the if you don't know, go into history and look at the 3/4 compromise. Black people were literally 3/4 of a person, and it was the law to oppress them. It was the law to view them as property, as cattle. So the whole thing of we got equal rights and everything else. We had to fight to be human beings. Our ancestors died for the right to vote. They shouldn't have had to fought in the first place. It should have been given to them and everything else. Because they are citizens like every other citizen in this country. But they treat them as lesser than. So this issue goes far beyond police brutality. It's an issue of systemic racism that is being dealt in this country. And I want to talk about solutions. And I want to talk about like reparations and everything else. And that's why reparations is so important, because it is the resolve, it is the restitution of all this historical racism, all this putting black people as cattle and everything else, treating them as second-class citizens. All this buildup is because that's why everybody's talking about reparations now, because no, you're going to pay what you owe us. And it's not like it hasn't been done before. When the United States did horrible things to Native Americans, they gave them reparations. When they did horrible things to Japanese people by putting them in internment camps, they gave them reparations. But when it comes to black people, there's more to it than that. They're making all these excuses. My ancestors, it happened a long time ago. Get over it. And I'm like, okay, that just makes me mad, because I'm like, it's not like this hasn't been done before. It's not that you can't do it; you just don't want to do it, and that's the problem.
Because again, at this point, you have to question the mindset, right?
Right.
There's no way that you still see it. You don't see it as equal. You still don't see it. America still doesn't see it as people. So that's the thing. So it's like the same mindset that they had, in the 60s, 50s, even, during post-slavery time. It's the same mindset that they have now. They just masked it differently. So again, even talking about the police officers and stuff like that in police department, it's the same kind of generational mindset, right? I mean, granted, not generational as in hereditary, as in my father and their father, but within the system of policing, it's the same thing.
And the system of America of itself, the justice system itself, is built off of racism. And the question, the justice system, how they act.
Police, honestly, are modernized KKK. And someone can,
exactly.
I would love to have a debate for anyone who says otherwise. Police are modern day KKK. So again, which is why I say defund the police, because you can fire a police chief, you can resign, you can do whatever you want, but because of the way that the police departments are structured and how they're taught, whether they want to believe it or not, how they're taught to ostracize people of color, black and brown persons, it is modern. It is modernized KKK. So when people protest and they're like, oh well, they try to identify the protesters as anti-police or
A mob.
exactly, almost like terroristic ideals, saying that protesters have terroristic ideals. That's not necessarily the case. But, and I say this all the time, all cops are bad. And I say that not to speak to an individual to be like, oh, well, every single cop is bad. No. But if you are in that department and you don't speak out, you're just as wrong as a person who's committing, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I have a saying that silence equals complacency. Silence equals complacency. Because if you are silent, you are complacent and complicit with what the other police officers are doing. If you don't speak up, if you're a police officer, you don't speak up about what's going on that you see going on around you, and you know when your heart is wrong, and you refuse to speak up because you want to quote unquote keep your job, you're just as complacent, you're just as guilty as the officer who kills an unarmed black person or who shoots him in the back or puts a knee on their neck, etc., etc. You're just as guilty.
Right.
Yeah, man.
I mean, honestly, it's all crazy. So, and the whole thing with the protest and going back to that, and kind of saying where does it go from here? I guess you kind of have to look at. I don't want to say the pioneers because there's definitely more people who contribute to the civil rights movement. But you think of like Martin and Malcolm, and it's like, yeah, Martin had a lot more. He was more peaceful about the situation. When I think about the protests that I've been to and some of the things that I've experienced. I wish, I wish that we could come together as a collective. And I'm gonna say this, and I know this is a podcast, but I really wish we could come together as a collective and talk things up. And I say that because, again, it's how much can you take. So even coming out there, I'm not really for the whole peaceful aspect, only because we've been doormats long enough. Like, people have walked over us enough. So for us to put ourselves in that position again during the protest, to be tear gas, pepper sprayed, ran over, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Some of these cops are very malicious in their actions.
Yeah, I've seen the videos, and they be straight up beating people up and everything else. They don't care who it is. They just be straight up rolling up on people, beating up people.
Care. So at that point, and again, I said this before, like, how many times do you have to push me and hit me for me to hit you back? And like, at this point, it's self-defense. And I think that we need to come together as a collective. Of course, stay focused on the mission, and but I'm not nobody's punching bag, and you can't tell me not to be out there because I am speaking on something that I strongly believe in. So you can't say don't go to the protest is not a viable option. But if you put your hands on me, understand I'm going to put my hands back on you. Right? So when it comes to us for the protesters, or speaking to the protesters specifically, you have a lot of people out there like, no, let's hold hands and sing kumbaya and the police will leave us alone. But I mean, how many times do we have to go out there to understand that they're not going to leave us alone?
Yeah.
Right? This happens every night. Every night we go out there, and every night they come ready. The police have been ready. They come ready.
They always come with their riot gear, and they're suited and booted like they're ready for battle, like they're going off to war. And I'm like, what is this? Is this Afghanistan? Are you in a foreign country somewhere? Like, you're not. These are citizens. These are American citizens, and you're treating them like you're just rolling over them and everything else. I'm like, what's wrong with you?
Right. So here we are, unprotected. Some people may have, a suitable gas mask. That's really about it. But here we are, holding hands with these gas masks on, and again, they have the cons. They have been shooting us with rubber bullets. So, I mean, clearly they don't want or care to hear what we have to say. And that's kind of my takeaway from the protest that I've been at. They don't care. They come out there every night, kind of like just saying, I wish somebody would, that type of attitude. And to be quite frank, nobody has to do anything. The past few protests that I've been to, in regards to like the RNC condition and stuff like that. Nobody has to do anything.
Yeah.
They literally came out, pushing people, spraying people, trying to, diffuse the crowd. And, once they start spraying, people, of course, once they spray, they kind of straggle away and stuff like that. But my thing is, you have to come out there ready. You have to come out there prepared. They're going to spray us. They're going to hit us. What are we going to do over time?
Yeah.
That's kind of just what I've been waiting for, is that, at some point in time, I forget who said it. I've heard you say it, but that whole...
It was Malcolm X. I believe it was Malcolm X who said, it's time to stop singing and start swinging. Basically, that's what he said.
I mean, yeah, I agree. Because, again, just as a regular person, if someone sets up an issue, like, and even whether you can fight or not fight, most of the time, your natural instinct is going to kick in, and you're going to either hit them back or do some type of protective shield to block them from striking you again. It doesn't make sense to me why we come out there and it's like, oh, turn the cheek. Especially when the news media frames it as us being the agitators. And
they always want to view us as the mob and everything else, especially with Fox News and those other sources and everything else. And like, that's the problem too.
Coming out there with all, purposeful intent of just having a peaceful protest.
Or you got something worse, X, where you have quote unquote these instigators who come from out of state, going to a protest and agitating and doing the rioting and everything else, and infiltrating. So you have quote unquote some of these white supremacists. Sometimes they be going in there into a protest, and everybody peacefully protested. They're rioting, they're starting stuff up, they're popping things off, and they're escalating the situation when the whole intent of the protest would be peaceful, but you got some agitators in there. And I'm like, my thing is, with the whole protest thing, etc., it's great. It's great for the first step, but I'm talking long term, how to defeat this problem of police brutality and police violence. And my thing is, you have to know who is in charge. Who is in charge? Who is the mayor? And going downward. So if you know who the mayor is, you know what their policies are, you know how they are. Like, for example, Rudy Giuliani, mayor of New York, you can tell he's a racist. And he hires the sheriff. That sheriff hires the entire police department. So if you have the mayor that is racist and has these certain views about black people, and you trickle down to the sheriff and down to the police department, you can figure out, this is not coming from just the police department, it comes from the mayor. So you got to look at the people in charge. Look who is the sheriff. Look who is the mayor. And if you realize that, oh crap, like this dude, Giuliani, is racist, or whoever your mayor is racist, then you need to vote that person out and get that person out. Know who is in charge, and then you can get rid of the entire police department and change it up to where they're not going to have that mindset of black people, we're beating them up and doing all this stuff because they're a threat, they're a threat, they're a threat. And also, like, when it comes to the training, when it comes to the training, the police are trained well. They're trained to do exactly what they need to do, or what they want to do, I should say. And the problem is not the training. The problem is the psychological mindset. It's like you said, the psychological evaluation. You look at their mindset and how they think and how they view certain people as a threat and view other people as a non-threat. Because remember, they know how to arrest people. When Dylann Roof went into a black church and shot up 9 people, what did they do to him? Did they kill him? No, they arrested him, they detained him, and then they took him to Burger King to get a freaking cheeseburger and a full meal. And then they sat him down there. When it comes to black people, they know what to do. Shoot to kill, shoot first, ask questions later, don't do anything, and this and that. So they know what they're doing. It's just we have to get that psychological mindset, get that mindset of racism and oppression. Like you said, the police are the modern versus KKK. We have to remove those cops and those who are complicit out of that police department. Because, I was going to go ahead because I'm saying is, I understand police have a tough job. I understand. I get that. But your job at the end of the day is to protect and serve, not beat and kill and pepper spray and shoot rubber bullets at whoever you feel like it because you feel that quote unquote you're above the law. And my thing is, those who are silent, those cops who are silent, you are complacent. If you truly want to do something, if you're a good cop and you want to do something about it, you speak out against your fellow officers. That might take, you might lose your job for that. I understand. But you must speak out because if you don't, you are complacent and you are just as guilty as the people who are killing unarmed black people.
So I'm going to share a very unpopular opinion. I don't believe that voting matters. And I say that because when you look at, okay, so, I mean, at this point, you can look at any mayor in the city, right?
Right.
I think because almost every single city has had some type of protest. When you look at the mayors of the city and things of that nature, or any city officials, honestly, they're all funded by the white supremacists. Okay? There's no top black person who's out here funding, political campaigns and stuff like that. So it's almost in a situation, and I do vote, so I have to, make that disclaimer while I'm saying what I'm saying. But I strongly believe that voting doesn't matter because when it's literally forcing the hand that's feeding you, right? So I can say I'm going for a city official, say I'm going for mayor, right? And I honestly, truly, deep down in my heart, believe Black Lives Matter. Why? Because I am black, first and foremost.
That's right.
And here I am, going to having these different campaigns, having these different speeches. Now I'm gaining sponsors, right? Because in order to be a top contender, you need to have some top contender money. Ain't nobody. That's why when you see people who really be out here speaking the truth, their votes be mad low. Why? Because people don't support that type of thing. So whatever you personally believe or not really doesn't matter. You have to know how to speak to the masses and gather their attention and make it seem like, you're across the board for everything and everyone. But again, the top dollars is coming from the white supremacists. So how does a white supremacist look like funding someone who is saying to fund the police department? They're not going to. And then that's why I say, maybe we should burn the city down. And I say hypothetically, but literal as well, because people care about money at the end of the day. And when you start targeting major corporations and their pockets start to fill it, they have an issue, i.e. COVID-19. Nobody really cared about COVID-19 until people started shutting the city down. Once they started shutting the city down, now everybody got something to say of, well, COVID ain't even this, or COVID ain't even that, because they don't want to lose money.
Yeah.
A lot of major corporations have took a huge hit with COVID-19, and now it has everybody's attention. So now you have the government mandating you need to wear a mask. Why? Because major corporations are being hit. If it wasn't like that, I can assure you people are still walking around without a mask, but it wouldn't be as big as it was, right?
Yeah.
So it's the same thing. If we start targeting, and again, people keep saying it, and even burning the city down, when I say hypothetically, that just means us as a black community coming together. So when we talk about recycling dollars, right? Yeah. Creating generational wealth. Really, building
black businesses, building black education.
Exactly. That also ties into burning the city down. They have never cared about us. Why do we put so much into, oh my God, I can't remember who said it, but he just said it. He was the NBA coach, Doc Rivers. He was like, we love this country so much.
But the country doesn't love us back.
So hard, and they don't love us back. We buy their brand, we play their game, we sing their songs. We
fought in every war.
Everything they want us to do for them to not care about us. So, no, voting doesn't matter because whatever the individual official feels, it doesn't matter because they literally have no say. Once you get into politics, and that's why, of course, I don't like Trump just because he's stupid.
Yeah.
But I also understand that a lot of this stuff but he just doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah.
And that's just honestly what it is. But besides that, a lot of this stuff is above his head. He literally really has no say in a lot of stuff. The same thing for Obama. I love Obama, but everybody acts like he's the black savior, and I don't believe that. You know what I'm saying? His hands were tied. It's a twofold. People will be like, oh, well, he's a black savior. He did so much for black people. And then other people like, oh, well, he didn't do enough for black people. One, understand, he can only do so much. Just because you're black, you know, he still has a whole country to maintain. So it's like, no, of course he's not going to get special.
And plus, during his career, that they pretty much tried to coming out the gate. They were blocking his stuff about Obamacare. They were blocking everything he was doing. Exactly. So it takes both the House and the Senate to run things.
Exactly. He could with the amount of power that he had. Trump, okay, again, just stupid and doesn't know what he's doing, maliciously did some stuff and, you know, try to screw people over. Okay, fine. That's what you did. But it's not even a voting thing because Trump was going to be president regardless. I can assure you, Hillary would have never. Hillary could have been going against, I don't even know, a kindergartner. America is not ready for a woman to be president. And that's just that on that. She wasn't going to be president.
They were barely ready for a black man to be president. So
they were, but I'm telling you, again, this is when you have to understand privilege, right? So, as a black man, you still have more privilege over a white woman because he's a man at the end of the day.
Okay. Agree, disagree. So, I was just saying that America wasn't ready. They were I said they were barely ready for a black president.
Wasn't ready, but I don't know. I just look like America. No, Obama was going to be president. Like I can't say that I was surprised when he was the elected, not like when he was elected for presidency. I can't say that I was surprised because I wasn't. A lot of people are like, oh, well, we're not going to get a black president. I knew he was. When he made it that far, again, he had the money to back him for it.
Yeah.
And I mean, and don't get me wrong, he stood for some good stuff. But I don't even know who was going against him.
I think it was John McCain. It was John McCain.
Yeah, right, yeah. So I just knew he was going to be president. But again, it's like, bro, like, I'm not saying that we can't have a woman president. Like, that's not what I'm saying. I just believe woman's right. What I'm saying is, for the good old boys, the top, again, we're talking about top decisions. We're talking about what the money, what the source of the money is coming from.
Yes.
Hillary will not ever be, she wasn't going to be president. Even for the female nominees who, and some of them were really good when the Democratic campaign first started, they weren't going to be president. They weren't. It makes a good storyline, but America is not ready for a woman president. And when I say America, I'm talking about
white America.
Thank you. Because they're not going to take orders from a woman, dog. I'm sorry, they're not. They have way too much pride. They have all this, hyper masculinity, whatever going on. It's just not going to happen. And it's sad. And it's not fair. And I'm not saying that it's right. I'm just saying from their standpoint, it would have never happened.
Mm.
We can have a woman as the vice president. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But for a president, it wasn't going to happen.
Yeah. And speaking of vice president, what do you feel that Kamala Harris is going to do for the black community as a vice president? I want to get your quick thoughts on that.
That's a tough one. I don't know. I honestly don't know because, again, with her it's a twofold, right? So being an elected official, your hand is again being forced fed. So yeah, she put back in the day. I don't know when she was. I think she was a senator some years ago, and a lot of people brought up. She's put a lot of black people in jail based off the laws that she had.
Yeah, I've heard people say that all the time. So.
And then I also hear people saying that we all have a past and we can grow from that. And both of those are very true, right?
Yeah.
So it's like I don't speak negative on Kamala only because one, I haven't followed her like that. I really didn't start paying attention. Even when she was going for presidency, she wasn't one of my top picks, so I really wasn't listening to some of her speeches that she was saying. I really didn't start paying attention to her until she was elected for Joe Biden's running mate for vice president. So I don't want to give a misinformed statement about her because I
understandable.
Really don't know. I I don't know at this time. I don't know.
Okay, I
I don't want to
understand.
say anything negative about it because she's going to get that regardless. And I mean, I do respect that she's an African American woman and will be the first if Joe Biden wins this presidency election. She will be the first African American
VP
who is the vice president, and as that by itself is a major accomplishment. So I don't want to say too much negative, ideals on what she may or may not do.
Yeah.
Because honestly, I just don't know.
Yeah. So I understand about that. I respect you because as a journalist, you always want to make an informed decision, and you want to don't just speak and shout and say anything because that's at that point that goes into opinion pieces. But going back to police brutality, in terms of the solutions and everything else, like you said, it should be defund the police. It should be doing that. I feel like it should be. You should pay attention to the people in charge and hold those people accountable. And you discussed about how voting doesn't matter. I have a slight disagreement to that because I believe it does matter. Because think about it: if voting didn't matter, why is Trump and his administration going through all this length to voter suppression, gerrymandering, all this other stuff where you're suppressing the vote, trying to stop people from voting? If voting didn't matter, why go through such an effort?
But see, and then the question that I ask is, why is he able to do that if voting did matter? Because the fact that he's able to literally do all this, and I get Corona does have a problem. This is, none of us, well, I take that back. This could have been prevented.
Yeah.
COVID, is COVID, and that was going to happen. How all of this happened, most definitely 100% could have been prevented. And that's definitely almost strong. But excluding that, he's using, COVID as an excuse to do what he's doing. But I feel that if voting did matter, this is illegal. He's been, okay. Everything Trump has done since being in office, this man has more dates as women than I've seen with any president. And granted, I'm only so old, so I mean, probably presidents in the 90s and stuff like that. Maybe they had scandals or whatever, but I mean,
the only one I know who has a scandal in my lifetime kinda is Bill Clinton with that Monica Lewinsky scandal. So
yeah. And that's slight knowledge, and that's only because people still talk about it. But that's really the only thing that I've ever heard of. But Trump has always did something illegal, and never is recommended for it. I remember, what was it, last year when they were talking about impeachment?
Yeah.
What happened with that? You know what I'm saying? So again, that's why I'm like, I can't say that I honestly feel that voting does matter because, again, like you said, and you made a great example with the police. You said the police are trained well. They know what to do. It's just who they do it with. I think that is probably one of the truest statements that I've heard in a long time. It's the same thing for politics. They know what to do. It's just who to do it with. If Trump was Obama, he would have been out of office.
I wouldn't even give him months. It would have been the first few days. They would have got him out of office. No problem.
He would have been out of office. There's absolutely no way. And this is not even touching on just how Trump talks. Just the type of stuff that he said. This is just with the things that he's done, the things that he's been tied to, how so many officials have have walked away from his team and his administration because of the underhanding things. And it's not even underhanding. These things, people are telling on him, have been telling on him. Trump is doing this, Trump is doing that, Trump has ties with Russia, all these things. They said that Trump cheated on the first election. Nothing has happened from it. And again, that's why I say I don't believe that voting really matters, because if you can have, ties with Russia and, they did whatever they did allegedly with the numbers, my man really didn't leave the window. He won the collegiate, stuff like that.
Electoral college, yeah.
Exactly. So stuff like that, it's okay, so... And maybe it's just my ignorance when it comes to the whole spectrum of voting. Maybe that's why I might feel that way, because I don't know, I don't understand 100% all that voting really applies to, but I do vote locally. I do vote nationally when it comes to the president and stuff like that. I am aware of. I try to be as knowledgeable as possible when it comes to our city councilmen, our Senate, our chair of representatives, things of those people, and the bills that they try to pass along. I do try to be knowledgeable in those things, but sometimes I can't help but think that just as not easy, but just as common as it is for pickups, quote unquote, to happen with electoral presidency campaigns, it's the same thing for local as well. So then that's when I ask the question, does voting really matter? You have, what I'm saying, even I remember, what was it, the swing vote? I forget who was going for president. But in Florida, like, there was this whole big thing for that, and everybody had to vote again. Like, stuff like that, like, if voting, it's just too easy to cheat.
Yeah.
At this point, it's too easy to cheat.
And when you have foreign intervention with our elections, come on now, that's just like, that's a problem. Like, really, how could it be that easy for a foreign government to come into our elections and then rig two elections for the candidate in their favor? And I'm like, wait a minute, no consequences? So I do definitely understand that where you're coming from, where you say voting doesn't matter because this and that and the other. But my thing was going back to how voter suppression, how that goes into it, and who to vote for, and all these local elections and stuff like that. A lot of times, if you don't vote, these actions have consequences because you didn't vote for like a mayor or your city council members. And let's say you have a Democratic mayor and a Republican mayor, and they're running. If the Republican mayor wins because people didn't vote enough, that affects the entire state where you live in. So if we live in Charlotte and we have a Democratic mayor or a Republican mayor, and the Republican mayor wins, that's going to affect where you live. That's why I do say voting does matter, because you're taking control over where you live. If you live in New York, if you live in Louisiana, if you live in Texas, if you live wherever, and you got to pay attention to the mayor because he's going to affect your living conditions. You understand what I'm saying?
No, I can get that. I can get that. And I think that's why you know what? That's another point. Because when you talk about the stuff like that, all of that all of that takes a part into making those types of decisions. So I see where you're coming from.
Yeah. So any thoughts on, in terms of like the police brutality, and in terms of basically how to end it? And I know there's some people out there who are going to say, some people say that there's going to be a race war and all that. Do you believe that's going to take place? Or I'm not really talking conspiracy theories, stuff like that. I'm just talking what people are saying, that enough is enough. They're tired of dealing with the police department and everything else. What are your thoughts on that? Closing out.
I kind of touched on that earlier. I wouldn't necessarily say a race war would ensue, but I think that, again, I think that we should, as a people, we should be prepared for anything. I think that something has to happen that hasn't happened yet in order for people to really grasp what's going on. You have people. So I read a lot of comments, right, during like say if there's like a protest or something like that. There's a lot of people who don't see a problem with what's going on, right? A lot of people first, and when I say people, I'm talking people who are not of color, and maybe even some people of color, some lost souls, there's all skin folk, gay skin folk. There are some people who truly, deep in their heart, believe that there's nothing wrong with the police department and that they're literally handling everything the way that they should be handling it. There are other people who just ignore it, right? They're like, oh, if I don't pay my mind, then it just doesn't make it real. So they're like, I'm not going to say this is right, I'm not going to say this is wrong. And then you have other people who are like you said, enough is enough, and something has got to give. I wouldn't be surprised if an event took place, bigger than Minneapolis, bigger than Atlanta, bigger than Portland, I wouldn't be surprised if things started happening. And what those things may be, I don't know, because I mean I'm not a fortune teller, nothing like that. I do believe that something big has to happen. Whether it is not necessarily a war, I just don't see a war happening. But I do think that something big needs to happen to grab the masses' attention and understand that you can't do this anymore. It's no longer a thing of we're not, we're tired, we're sick. Like it's like a boiling point, right? Like you put your pot on the stove, it's starts to bubble a little bit, you get small little bubbles, whatever. It's like, okay, everything is looking good. You continue to let it go on, and the bubbles start to get a bit bigger. Depending on how much water and how much pressure is on the pot, the water can bubble over and start to spill out onto the countertop. I think it's the same thing. I think we're at a boiling moment. But if you keep pushing us, if you keep putting pressure, it's instinct, it's nature to just go over the top. And I think that that's the only way that people are actually going to get it. Because again, this is years. This is nothing new. This is hundreds and hundreds of years. You guys are doing the same thing. You guys are just finding different ways to mask it. And we as a people have to figure out how do we come back at for the last time. Because what we don't need is 400 years from now us singing the same song.
Yeah. Everybody saying kumbaya and this and that, we're still being oppressed. I'm like, come on now. Something is, like you said, something has got to give. And I'm just going to.
Something has got to give.
Yeah, something, I feel like enough is enough at this point.
If you keep, if you keep doing the same thing.
It's insanity.
Yeah, it's insanity. So I think I'm hoping we're at a point as a people so we're understanding that us doing the same thing is insanity. We're insane. But when you're insane, you do what? You go crazy.
Yeah.
We need to go crazy. So.
Yeah. Well, X, I just want to say you've been a great and fantastic guest. I appreciate your opinion. I love the back and forth that I was saying, agree, disagree, and everything else. And I just want to let my viewers know that, hey, this is what the Black Evolution is all about, trying to figure out what's going on within our community, figuring out what we need to do, and trying to come up with better solutions. So I'm just going to close out this podcast saying thank you, X, for joining the Black Evolution. This is Dab Daniel, and I'm signing out.